Yes?
Yeah, go.
Oh, yeah. Are you all ready?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi. I think I know most of you all. My name is Daniel Fairley. I'm the Youth Opportunity Coordinator. I get to focus on Black male achievement as well as be the advisor for Youth Council. I co-advise with Gretchen Ellis as well as Charlene Green. So I just wanted to say thank you all because my budget and funding to my position actually comes through you all as City Council. So thank you for making my dreams come true. This is an amazing position, getting to work with kids every day, and so I have you all to thank for that. First of all, Youth Council's focus has been largely focused on equity the past couple of years. Just last year, even before the You Are Still Black, Charlottesville Racial Divide Hinders Students article that came out in the New York Times, we actually had a youth dialogue on race that came out in February of 2018, just kind of focusing on what equity issues that students saw inside of the city schools. So we had that focus in February 2018, and then after the article came out in October, we actually were able to work with Youth Council and even get the school board to request just some youth information. Kind of like we want to know, we've heard from parents, we've heard from teachers, we've heard from general committee members and community members. We want to hear from the youth, what does equity look like inside of Charlottesville City Schools? And so the city schools and requested that from Youth Council. Youth Council then went out and conducted over 30 different focus groups across 2 days. Myself, Charlene, as well as Gretchen were there just as note takers, but the Youth Council was really the people that were able to come in and just kind of talk about their experiences and head up the focus groups. And so it was really amazing to watch them head up these focus groups, and then while we took notes, they then took notes that we had, came up with suggestions as to not just what the equity issues are inside of the city schools, but also what the suggestions should be for moving forward. And so I'm here just to introduce them, just as a proud partner with Youth Council, and to just let them go through and talk about their suggestions, and we're ready for any questions you all may have afterwards. Awesome. Thank you.
Greetings, council members. I'm Ben Yates. I'm a sophomore at Charlottesville High School, and I'm just gonna read you guys the different topics we have and then introduce a couple of the first ones. So all of our topics are a strong focus on four-year colleges being a negative aspect, and then a lack of course knowledge and registration, the lunches on the schools, demystifying college admissions, lack of diversity in advanced courses, the standard diploma versus advanced diploma, standardized testing, the ESL student experience, Quest program, algebra functions and data analysis course, and then the Black Student Union demands. So our first topic is a strong focus on four-year colleges. So a lot of students don't really know that we have an advisor for people who aren't going to college after high school and don't know that resource is there. And then also for like teachers and most people just kind of assume you're going to college, and so kids who aren't, or that's just not the right thing for them, don't really have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of people supporting them after high school. And so our suggestions for that, just advertising and letting students know and making that resource more readily available to students, the advisor for after high school people who aren't going to college, so more trade-oriented jobs. And then also increase the number of K-TEC options available at CHS, so it just makes it easier for students who aren't going to college and are going to go to trades after high school to take those classes. Our next topic is course knowledge and registration. So we had four big complaints about that one. The first one was the lack of knowledge of available courses, just an overall kind of vagueness of all the courses you can take and all the electives and the requirements and prerequisites for those courses. No long-term planning in middle school or high school, so really it's just a year-by-year planning. So if you kind of have your goals that you want to meet by into high school, there's no space where you can really sit down and set out a plan to achieve those goals. So a lot of people, don't really know what they need to do to reach those goals, and rather than slip through the cracks. And then also teacher recommendations are too hard to change, so students who may want to challenge themselves are not able to because of teacher recommendations, and therefore aren't allowed to excel as far as they want to. And then just in general, students, especially in lower level classes, so more academic level classes, are not encouraged to challenge themselves at all. So they're actually told not to take harder classes even if they want to, and are trying to seek help outside of school to be able to take those challenging courses. So our suggestions for that were to create an individualized course plan for all students that's revisited each year and then adjusted according to changing goals or kind of where you are in that plan, so that every student can basically set a goal and then have an actual plan to meet that. And hopefully that'll increase the number of students who are successful and have jobs or go to college outside of high school. And then survey parents to find the best way to communicate potential course options. So, a lot of that starts at the younger age with parents just not really knowing what kind of things students need to take and what classes they need to take, what they need to do to be prepared for those higher level classes. It's just to figure out the best way to communicate that to parents. And then decrease the barriers to override a teacher recommendation. Just makes it so that's not as hard as steadfast, because especially people who have whose parents can't call in and override those, there's really nothing they can do. People whose families whose parents don't have to work as much and have more time can just call in and get those changed, but kids who don't really have that available, it's a lot harder for them to change their classes. And then increase support academically for students who are trying to challenge themselves, so increase tutoring, increase outside of class help, so that people who do want to challenge themselves are able to and have support to do that. And then the last one was possibly train, so Link Crew at Shuffle High School is a freshman mentoring program, and so train those people to kind of facilitate that 4-year plan. And then our next topic is the school lunches. And so our different issues where some students don't eat during lunch because there are only pork options left. So people who have religious diets, a lot of times, there's pepperoni and salads, there's pepperoni pizzas, just increase the options that meet religious diets so that those students don't feel like they can't eat. And then also, the second one's along the same line, and then there's also a perception that people who are on free and reduced lunch can only get pizza, and so that's all they get, and that's not necessarily always what they would prefer, and so just make that to increase the labeling on the food so that people are aware of what they're actually allowed to eat. And then just in general, and this has been a big complaint, but increase the nutrition and calories in the school lunches. People who have played sports and are very active, they're not very filling, so it's kind of hard to be able to compete at a high level when you're functioning on low levels of nutrition and calories. So our suggestions were to have water as an option for lunch, not just milk, going back to the halal diet, students who can't have dairy meat in the same meal. Make more cheese pizzas and non-pork options, so take the pepperonis out of salads, label the food ingredients, make lunches more filling and nutritious, and survey students on what they actually want to eat. So send out surveys and figure out what kind of food students would prefer and would be most filling for them, and then clearly label what costs money and what doesn't. And so then Eve will be presenting the next topics.
Hi, I'm Eve Kiesecker. I'm a freshman at CHS, and I'm going to talk about demystifying college admissions. So the college application process is really hard and confusing, as I found out this year when my sister was applying to college. So she went in for a lot of visits with school counselors and people have already applied to college, but some of the school counselors were not always made aware of changes to college admissions. They're not really completely up to date on how much an ACT is going to be weighed into your application, what ACT or AP scores are accepted at certain colleges. Also at CHS we have a weighted GPA, but colleges look at your unweighted core GPA, and it's really hard to find that out to put on College Board. Also, another problem is that the essay writing, which is usually a pretty big part of your college application process, is difficult, and a lot of students struggle with it because it's like your chance to represent yourself through your writing, but if you don't have a good example or you don't have a good teacher who doesn't quite teach that subject, then it's difficult. So our suggestions were to have an admission counselor from some local schools or even some out-of-state schools come in and talk to school counselors and AVID teachers to keep them up to date on admission guidelines yearly, and to also have former or current admission counselors come in to talk about the behind-the-scenes college admissions process to students. My other topic that I'm going to talk about is the lack of diversity in advanced classes. So the perception at CHS is that many white students that were in Quest are in advanced classes, and people of color that weren't in Quest are not. And so the way it is right now at CHS is that there's kind of two pathways, and if you're in Quest in elementary school, you go to honors, to AP or DE classes, to the advanced diploma, and then you go to college. And if you're in non-Quest, then you go to academic classes, and then you get a standard diploma, and then you go to whatever's next. And so there's a lot of issues with that we'll discuss later, but it starts in elementary school. Students take the same courses with the same kids starting in Quest K through 12, and then that makes them segregation by class, and they don't want to go outside of their comfort zone to meet students who are in academic classes or AP classes because they just don't have class with them, so they don't know them. And there's little academic support for students who are taking AP or honors classes for the first time from teachers and peers. So our suggestions were to allow for more students to try AP classes by creating a pathway into advanced classes, so like a test run basically where a student could have an AP class and also take academic classes at the same time, so they get the best of both worlds. And teachers, we'd like them to encourage everyone to take at least one honors class in each subject just to see what they liked, they don't like, and where their potential can lead them. And to take away the standalone honors classes to help diversify classes. We've done this with English and it works pretty well. And to hire AP tutors and peer navigators for each subject with office hours, so you don't necessarily have to go see your teacher in case you have track practice or soccer or something after school. You can also go visit a classmate who might be a little bit more understanding of schedule conflicts and all that. Thank you.
I'm Harrison Greenhoe, and I'm a freshman at CHS. And the first topic I'm doing is the standard diploma versus the advanced diploma. Students and parents have a lot of questions around the difference between these diplomas. Like, can you get accepted into a college with a standard diploma instead of an advanced? And also, what is required to get an advanced diploma? And a lot of people also wonder, do colleges care what diploma you receive? Our suggestions for this are that the school board should advocate at the General Assembly to eliminate the diplomas because it creates an unnecessary binary. And we also suggest that we explain the differences between the two diplomas to Buford students and parents so they're ready when they get to high school to know what to do. And we also suggest that everyone gets an individualized plan with pathways to each diploma and the requirements that they need. And this can be done during when you choose your classes at the beginning of the year and when you're a freshman coming to school. And then the next topic is standardized testing. There are two main issues in this. The first is that some teachers only teach to the SOL, and the students learn less critical thinking skills in those classes because the teacher only teaches what they need to pass the test. And then the other issue is that there are no free PSAT, SAT, ACT, or AP prep courses provided by the school, so a lot of times students aren't ready for those tests. Our suggestions are to advocate for the elimination of SOLs on the state and federal level. We would also suggest to provide free classes to help students get ready for these big tests, and to create a school-wide/division-wide mantra about critical thinking by incorporating these ideas into teacher trainings. The next topic is the ESL student experience. So many students that don't speak English as their first language don't feel respected or heard by admin and teachers, and they also are very separate from the rest of the students at CHS. Our suggestions are to have cultural sensitivity training for admin and teachers, and also to raise awareness of phone translation services so these students can communicate with the rest of the school. We would also suggest having in-person translators for these students and big occasions like class registration, counselor meetings, orientation, and tours. And our last suggestion would be to find creative ways for ESL students to integrate with other students in a meaningful way, which is not just walking through the same halls with them and seeing them every day. Thank you.
Hello, I am Noelle Morris, and I'm going to talk about the Quest program. So here are some issues. The Quest program is based toward like wealthy and white students. Quest leads to a separate pathway for wealthy and white students through the CCS system. Quest was created after desegregation in order to separate white students from kids of color. Here's some suggestions. Eliminate the program. It doesn't measure giftedness. You can buy books to pass the test. It creates a pipeline to honors and AP. It separates students and minimizes integration through classes. Raise awareness for the Quest program to parents and stop testing in first grade. Have ongoing tests for Quest for all students with the prep materials for the test available through the library. Next, I'm going to talk about the Algebra Functions and Data Analysis course. AFDA can place students a year behind in math courses, which can inhibit their ability to be on track for college. So there's no verified credits for taking this class. Here's some suggestions. Make AFDA a free summer course so students won't be behind for the school year, and provide tutoring services for students when they get to Algebra 2 instead of in addition to recommending AFDA. And here are some of the Black Student Union demands. So Charlottesville City Schools and Charlottesville should denounce and call out racism against Black and Brown students. African American history class to like hold the same weight as like an honors history course, like not like just like an elective. Hire more black teachers, especially in core class honors AP classes. Extend resources in addition to AVID for future Black and Brown first generation college students. Discipline reform, end the excessive suspending and policing of Black middle and high school students by creating a diverse governing board of staff, students, and parents to oversee equitable and effective discipline. So test every student for Quest. Apply mental health practices that are culturally relevant and racially aware. A high standard for programming associated with Black history. No one should have the opportunity to opt out of it. Racial bias and cultural sensitivity training for all school resource officers. And lastly, implement the same locked door and buzzer system currently used in elementary schools, such as Walker, Buford, and Charlottesville, to ensure the safety of the students. And if there are any other suggestions that you guys have, then let us know.
So again, just thank you all, and knowing that Youth Council is here representing you all as far as a city council commission, we'd love for you all to give any suggestions, anything you want us to look into going forward in the future.
I have a question. You are presenting this to the school board.
Yes, they already presented to the school board. And so we just wanted to give you all an update as to what they've been up to.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's important to make sure that, city officials along with the school board, that we all are aware of the direction that you all would like. And I just want to say thank you. I love, this gets me really excited because it's very important that we hear from you all about what we need to do to make the environment that you all spend a significant amount of time in daily work for you. And so that I know you were at the equity meeting presenting some of this, so we have a lot of work to do, and you all continue to hold us accountable to make sure that we get it done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Here he comes. Yeah, has everyone seen the letter that they are referencing when they're talking about Quest and the creation of it after desegregation? So if you haven't, that's very important. And I don't have a copy of it. I'm sure it's somewhere, but it's important for us as a community to understand why a program like that was created, to make sure, that even if we have to desegregate schools, that then within the schools can we create segregated spaces, and for us to really talk about how intentional that was. So if you haven't seen the letter, I'm sure someone can make sure that you get a copy of it. All right, so what do we have next? So we have Greenstone on Fifth, corporation sponsorship agreement for enhanced police coverage. First of 2 readings. Is there somebody present?
It lists Captain Hatter, but Madam Mayor, I could summarize if you'd like.
Okay.
Greenstone on Fifth did enter into an agreement with the police department dated August 1st, 2018, and it terminated this year, January 31st. They made a donation of $41,092 to the city of Charlottesville for enhanced police coverage near Greenstone and Fifth Apartments. This is, in effect, the action you're being asked to take is an appropriation to accept that money and appropriate it. Per the memo, it should have been done earlier in the year, but this is just the formality of accepting the appropriation and appropriating the money in the proper account.
And this is no longer in place, or it's still?
So to my understanding, the services have been rendered, and they just have come out of the police budget account and need to be transferred over into, from the previously allocated accounts into a line item for us.
Yes.
But are they asking for this service to continue?
No,
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
All right. So, any additional questions from council? All right. All right, so the consent agenda for the next meeting. All right. Next, we have the design, build, construction, procurement procedures for the city, first of 1 reading. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Walker, councilors. Welcome, Dr. Richardson. This request seeks City Council's approval to implement a design-build resolution and procedures that allow the city to pursue design-build projects. I think the more immediate driver is for energy performance contracting, but this has broad use across the city and is appropriate for certain types of construction projects. With design build, the locality contracts with a contractor that provides both design build services for the project as a team, as opposed to the city's traditional procurement process for construction, which is design, then bid, and then build. I'm glad to elaborate further if you would like.
I do have a question. How do you get around the requirement that you have as a local government that you have to go the lowest qualified bidder on a construction project if you've kind of not had a competitive bid process on a set of construction documents?
So the Public Procurement Act, the standard method of procurement is exactly what you said. That is the design, bid, build. But there is enabling legislation in the Public Procurement Act that allows an alternate method if the locality adopts a resolution and procedures that are in accordance with the Secretary of Administration's. And so there is that enabling legislation. So if council approves that, this is not fitting for every type of construction project. I gave some examples in my summary, but we could indeed award based on evaluation criteria. Price would be a factor that is considered.
But you could just determine that you could hire a local contractor, for example, to build your design build project if you felt that they were the most qualified, but you could also then generate local employment.
So we would have to look at it on a per project basis and look at the funding source for that project, because the different funding sources come with different requirements. It is heavily qualifications based, as is professional services in general. So, you know, if firms are qualified, if they meet the qualifications of the pre-qualification process, and then it goes to the next phase where we're looking at their technical proposal. I mean, certainly a local firm could be successful, and it's not just low bid.
It's just not low bid.
It's not just
Okay.
low bid, so there are
So
other factors there.
And you couldn't make local hiring a criteria.
I know that we can, under the scope of HUD projects with Section
With Section
3,
three.
Under the scope of HUD projects, without looking at the criteria of a specific project, I'm unsure.
I'd be very interested in that, if there's any opportunity for a local hiring clause in doing a design-build approach. I think it would be extremely beneficial for the local economy and for local employment. I know that Section 3 is a huge driver, but that's just one thing I've been trying to get happen ever since I've been on council, and it's just like I beat my head against the wall because of state procurement law. As a rule, we just go low bid, but this seems to be a way to get around it.
It's not, I wouldn't consider it a way around it. I mean, this is not just low bid, it is qualifications based and it is a team. But I know you're specifically asking questions about local hiring.
Right.
You know, if we were looking at a HUD project, as I mentioned, and looking at Section 3, yes. If we were looking at something for the Federal Transit Administration under those guidelines, I can't immediately off the top of
Okay.
my head think of a way to do that. If we were looking at Department of Transportation funding, like for VDOT projects, I can't immediately think of a way to do that. I know that the scope of the minority business program, the city's minority business program, there are requirements at both the state level and the federal level for inclusion of certified businesses under the city's minority business program. When it gets down to the local hiring level, I know that Section 3 is the
really
only law that or it's the only scope that I'm immediately aware of that we could do something like that. But I do think that, you know, contracting with certified businesses, I mean, that also keeps the money in Charlottesville,
Okay.
right?
Thank you.
So,
Yeah. Thank you.
And I just, my question would be just the conversation around, you know, looking at city business through the equity lens and how you're handling that in your office, and especially if there's no longer the process for 3 bids to come in, even if it may not have, you know, fit the criteria of equity, but just this, you know, selection process and the determining process of what is fiscally advantageous to the, you know, public. Is that a situation where, so that's 2 questions, is that a situation where it's, like if the time delay could prompt, you know, the service or the development to be more costly versus whether it's a lower bid? I mean, is there a situation that you can do that prompted this change other than that other localities were doing it? Was there something that happened here that prompted this?
for the city, so the enabling legislation has been in place for a while. For the city, this is also something we've been looking at for quite a while. Our more immediate driver is for the city to be able to participate in the state's its energy performance contracting. It's a state program that's administered by the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy, and we're interested for that. I also think it may be good for some of our bridge projects, and we have some other projects that it may be a good
Even like the
approach to
parking
use.
garage?
Parking garage
Yeah.
is one that comes to mind
That's what I
as
remember
well.
coming up. Yeah.
And so the, in terms of notification in the city, who is aware of when these projects are approved? And,
So the projects will use a two-step process. One is a request for qualifications that will be advertised on the city's website, and we'll do other advertising. There will be direct invitation for that as well. We will be looking at certified businesses that are part of our minority business program, so minority-owned, woman-owned, small businesses, service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses. And so in addition to direct invite, we will be publicly advertising, and we will shortlist from there. Our procedures say approximately 3 to 5 qualified firms to then compete in the next step, and then that next step will be broken out into 2 pieces where we're looking at the technical proposal, and then once we narrow down the top from the technical proposals, we'll get into the price proposals in that process. But the opportunities will be advertised, and we'll be making a decision on a procurement by procurement basis on when we would use this method. There's pre-approval required to use the method.
okay. All right. Any other question?
No, I just wanted to thank you for all the hard work you've been putting in. And also kudos to you as well as Ms. Holly Lee for the great time we had at the Minority Business Appreciation Breakfast a
stay
couple
on
weeks
track.
ago. Yeah, but I mean, she's here, so let's tell her, give her some
Thank
love. Give them flowers while they still here. But I think it's a great initiative, man. Complete support. Dang, Mayor Walker. Maybe treat you like Tupac up in a minute, man.
Is there a motion?
I move we adopt the resolution approving procedures to govern the competitive procurement of design-build contracts.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, please vote. All right, and it carries 4-1. And thank you for all the hard work you're doing.
Oh, now you want to say it.
Because this is the appropriate time. And there are flowers, plants up here that the schoolyard garden board.
Now you want to mention
And
flowers. 'Cause I bring them up.
Before people start leaving, if you want to pick up one. Okay, the next, revising ABRT and setting funding priorities.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Weird having him down there. I do have the Mike Murphy with me and also Ryan Davidson from Budget in case there are questions. Staff was asked today to identify a couple of alternative scenarios, and so we did that, and so I want to pass these out. So just a quick recap. A work group established last year met multiple occasions to identify improvements, both in terms of process and potential impact for the agency budget review team, which is the city's funding process for nonprofits. Those recommendations were presented to council, I think initially last fall, and then a formal meeting was set up for with the potential of a resolution in January. So we met January 22nd. Council considered the resolution, which was primarily focused on revising the agency budget review team process into 4 buckets of funding and establishing a priority setting commission to identify community needs and then to use the city's funds to support meeting those needs with larger grants, multi-year grants, and as opposed to a more generalized approach that has been used in the past. Council requested a work session, which was May 6th, for additional conversation, and then at that work session, Council made recommendations, asked questions, and then requested additional time for follow-up today. So The memo included some recommendations from staff about moving forward, and then there were some community comments that came over the weekend, and then council requested, based on those comments, an alternative scenario that would not include deferring another year of funding to establish changes in the process. And so that's what's in front of you here. So how would you like me to proceed in terms of sharing the information? Give you a second to look at the scenario or walk through it?
Yeah, let's walk through it.
Okay. So the alternative scenario is was a suggestion by a couple of community members, including Erica Vixilia, who is the co-chair of the UVA's working group, who is here to answer questions about the UVA process if you'd like at some point, and Christine Nardi from the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, and there may have been other community members who weighed in with similar suggestions. The suggestion is to, instead of setting a priority setting work group, instead create a work group that would identify solutions and measurements or metrics related to the 4 priority areas identified by UVA's working group, which include jobs, wages, affordable housing, public health care, and education. So the suggestion would be that instead of suspending the process another year, that we create 2 sort of funding mechanisms. One for grants over $25,000 that would be focused on meeting needs in the areas identified by the UVA's working group, and then the other would be a simplified process for grant requests under $25,000 that would be where priority would be given to those organizations that can demonstrate that they're meeting the needs of marginalized community members, but not necessarily meeting or providing any solutions to the 4 priority areas. So sort of 2 paths. Both application processes would be modified so that they're simpler for nonprofits. It's one of the process improvements we heard pretty consistently across the board, was making this an easier access and easier a mechanism to improve smaller nonprofits, particularly grassroots nonprofits' ability to seek this money successfully. So we would then suggest that we establish a measurements and solutions group that would be formally appointed by council to identify appropriate measurements, benchmarks, solutions, and metrics for the 4 priority areas, doing some best practice research, but more importantly, holding community meetings and engaging in robust community engagement to understand the kinds of solutions that community members want in these areas. We acknowledged, both staff and council and community members acknowledged in the work session, that one of the pieces of feedback that we wish that we had the most was what people would like to see in their community, sort of more specifically in terms of solutions. What would work for you? Not just what does the national data say will work, but what will work for you in your community or in your neighborhood. And intentionally engaging the nonprofit leaders of color in community engagement listed above, but also in other recommended ways of hearing from those voices that are not traditionally heard in our collective processes. Reviewing recommended measurements, benchmark solutions, and metrics, and then reporting out to City Council in May 2020 to influence the fiscal year 2022 nonprofit funding cycle. So we would establish the group and also set the priorities for the current cycle based on the UVA working group, so parallel process. We would additionally support nonprofit capacity building by inviting nonprofits to apply for grants under $10,000 to build organizational capacity. It's one of the most sort of robust conversations I think we had at the work group, was trying to help nonprofits improve their overall internal infrastructure. We would prioritize those applications that requested funds for equity analysis or action planning. Those would be our highest priority. The strategic planning, financial protocols or development planning, leadership development, data collection and evaluation. We would also permit applications for capacity building activities that we haven't imagined already, that are identified by the nonprofits as something that they need. We would recommend deferring the decision to set aside funds for arts and culture for a variety of reasons. In terms of the timing, we would suggest that there's some opportunities coming up with new leadership in place of the CACVB, and also more arts-specific representation on that board that might influence a decision that council might want to make about arts and culture funding, and that we would encourage collaboration among arts organizations prior to final decision-making. I know there has been there have been a number of starts and stops for collaboration among arts organizations. And without the formal infrastructure of Piedmont Council for the Arts, it's been difficult for the arts organizations to have a collective voice. But this might be an opportunity for council to say we'd like to hear from them about how they would like that money to be, what criteria that they would recommend, those kinds of things before we move forward. But we would defer that process for another year. We would make the specific process improvements, simplified application process, diversify technical assistance. That's one of the most consistent pieces of feedback we got as well about process. Establish a new application review team, create and implement robust training, including conflict of interest, power dynamics, and bias training for those members. Conduct site visits for all of the applications. We heard pretty consistently that the inconsistent application of site visits was confusing to nonprofits. We would change the name. This is one of the things we've talked about for several years, to City Nonprofit Partnership Funding. Do we create the mission statement that the work group had identified, which is City Nonprofit Partnership Funding addresses significant and urgent community needs to improve the lives of marginalized community members by funding holistic strategies with the greatest potential to work. And we would create a web page on funding process on the city website so that nonprofits would know how to apply and what the process looked like and didn't just have to be on a listserv list. So we did make an attempt at a change in resolution language in case you all wanted to move forward with establishing this measurements and solutions work group to get their work started.
So the name, because we've been talking about the name, that's definitely one area I would like, just looking at this briefly and getting it. If the name, the conversation around the name change was to make sure that it was, it discussed the hopefully holistic practice, client-centered. And so just for me looking at this, seeing city nonprofit partnership, when I think it needs to be something along the lines of like this holistic attempt to make sure that the services that individuals are receiving enable them in some way for their lives to get better as a result of the services they are receiving. And so, so while the money is taxpayer money and the nonprofits will be providing the service, it's neither about, neither of those entities should be the primary focus. So if we could just look at that. Also, just getting this, I had a brief conversation right before this. I would like some time to look over it some more, but I do like the plan to not freeze the money and to move forward with that. The working group and those is not, even if you go back further, because I spent some time and we had talked about all the studies in that meeting. And I just want to say again for people who did not hear that, yes, I did put the group together and this was a platform, but I want to just say again some of the people who were on that group. So, and then I drew a complete blank. But Andrea Douglas, Joy Johnson, Dr. Leah Henry, Sally Hudson, Ryan Davidson, Kaki Dimick,
Denise.
Yeah, I was pointing to you first, but Denise Johnson,
Diane.
Lisa.
Lisa Woolfolk. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Diane McNeil.
Diane McNeil, myself, Heather, Holly Hatcher started out with us too. Am I leaving anyone? Dolly Joseph. So when you walk into city, and I've said this before, primarily you usually see all white group of people, any room, and I am saying it out loud, but you can just walk in these rooms and you can see for yourself. So it was the most diverse group that I've been a part of since I've been, and no one had any interest in terms of the money coming to them. And so that's what, moving forward, I think that we should, whatever this commission look like, if it's someone that has the potential to apply for funding, because there's enough people in the community that have these expertise, have been former, directors, staff on nonprofit boards, but, and this is one of the conversations I've been having with council about the hack too. If there are people on there who are receiving some of this funding, I think we should definitely make that part of the, conversation that we're having, that the individuals on the commission are not the individuals who organizations would be receiving.
We had, when it was identified as the priority setting commission, we had identified 6 slots that would be for nonprofits, 2 from sort of small grassroots nonprofits, 2 from mid-size, and 2 from large. But moving to a solutions platform, particularly a platform that's focused on hearing from people we don't traditionally hear from, the Constitution changed to include 2 community members, 2 members with professional data analysis experience, including a background in economics, social science, public policy, or similar, 2 members with community organizing experience, so that we can take advantage of people's expertise to get out there in ways that we haven't been able to engage community in the past, 2 at-large members, and then the council member. So the conflict issues, I think, change significantly with the Constitution change of the potential group.
Yeah, that looks good. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9.
I do have a question. A couple. Okay. Because the comments that we got from Ms. Vecellio and Ms. Nardi did also include the reference to the UVA working group. And again, I'm just reading this very quickly. So how does this new resolution foresee working with the university's next steps to implement its recommendations from its working group?
I think primarily it's about adopting the same priority areas. I think that we're not sure, not just we, but the community, the working group, UVA, is not clear on how that they'll be using the priority areas that have been identified, but Erica can perhaps answer other questions.
So this could be a model for them on how to implement it.
Or an opportunity to say, this is how we could collaborate on, if we
Together.
share this effort, what could be
Great.
leveraged for the good of our community.
And I just want to say, I like the evolution, or it almost like the complete revolution of originally being focused on a commission to set priorities to one is accepting the priorities has already been kind of mined from the community, but that what we need to do is get focused on making sure that we're meeting the needs of the client, and that we're then measuring success.
I think
And defining what success means.
One of the things we most consistently hear is that our community members have told us what's wrong.
Forever.
For a long time, and they either are frustrated by no action or the wrong kind of
Yeah.
action. So I think we have to be listening with different ears, and that sort of getting to this place allows us to engage differently and also listen differently, so that we can say we're interested in these 4 broad areas, but we are not sure. So the first year we'll allow nonprofits to define what it is that they'll do under these 4 broad areas, but after the measurements and solutions group has done their work, then the next year we'll be more specific about the kinds of solutions and metrics that the community would like to see.
So, and my only concern is that this hasn't been posted publicly. So I don't feel comfortable voting on this tonight. I would like to get it in a future council agenda item where it's posted. And then we go through the regular process of adopting the resolution. But right now, I like the direction this has gone in a lot, but that's just my opinion right now. But I do think it would be important to get this in the public eye in a future agenda.
No, I agree. My main thing is just the timeline that staff will have, because, it was clear that, I expressed it during my city manager check-in, I just was freezing for another year just seems like a lot. And I just feel like that I want to make sure that we're giving other nonprofits a chance to kind of involve themselves. So we just need to, I think, do this relatively quickly in terms of getting it back on so that staff has the appropriate time,
Absolutely.
even if it's a simplified application process. We're on a compressed timeline just to get back to our normal cycle. But although we did say that we might have a little more wiggle room than maybe we had in the past. So, and the other question this kind of begs is, you know, do we want, when we get to this point where we have adopted it, what is our communication going to be with the county? Because those nonprofits are going to be going through 2 different cycles for that fiscal year.
Can that be figured out between now and when we have it on the agenda?
I know that the Board of Supervisors is considering this in early June at their meeting to talk about their process for going forward, and they know that we're doing this tonight and potentially at another time. So we've agreed, staff have agreed to share communication as we're going. They remain interested in whatever solution we identify.
And we have a joint meeting coming up.
Yeah.
It's in June.
Yeah, so we can also discuss it at that
Yeah,
meeting.
even if directionally we can get something to them sooner versus later, just to noodle on.
So we can put this on our next meeting.
So June 3rd.
And, yeah.
When is our
Thank
county
you.
meeting?
June 6th.
So if this is on June 2nd, June 3rd,
June 3rd is our next
and
one.
then is that an,
Is it enough time for you to read this?
no, it's not, I'm not, I'm trying to be funny. That was good. That was good.
I'm just saying.
That was good. But I'm just wondering for us to provide the recommendations and the feedback that staff needs, and then for us to turn it around quick enough to be prepared for the meeting with the county on the 6th. But if staff says it's fine, I mean, it's fine with me. Is that okay?
Because the next meeting is June 17th.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, which meetings are we talking about? We have 2 council meetings and then a joint meeting in
Right.
June.
So
June
3rd is a council meeting, June
Right.
6th is
Sixth.
your joint meeting, and June 17th
Okay.
is the next council meeting.
Correct.
If there are substantial changes to the alternative scenario, it would be helpful to have them tomorrow.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean. Like, they need enough time to be able to
Because
review
this
the
is-
changes, decipher the changes, and then if we're going to present it before the county on the 6th.
We would need, I would need to get the revised information to Ms. Thomas by Tuesday morning at the very latest, and that would mean that I lose
Next
social points with her to do it that late.
We try
So
to shoot
Friday
shoot
is
within the
better.
week. Yeah, the end of this week is
Yeah.
the goal.
Yeah.
But
For
is
us to
June-
provide feedback to staff.
Yeah, but is June 17 too late for you in terms of getting in the cycle?
Yes.
For me as well, because I would like for us to talk
Oh,
about this
okay.
with the county.
I thought you were arguing actually for June 17.
I just wanted to be clear. No, I was just wanted to hear from staff, specifically Ms. Demick, if that was okay, and the timeline that she just provided for us in regards to, well, she needs feedback by the end of the week or by Tuesday and whatnot.
If I get feedback by the end of the week,
Yes, ma'am.
and it's not in opposition to each other,
Right,
right?
right.
And so there's still a clear direction for staff to take, then, by Friday would be fine.
Okay.
I think it sounds like directionally we all are feeling positive.
This is very positive.
Yeah. Well, we can have our comments to you
Yeah.
by the end of the week.
Excellent. I look forward to receiving them.
I mean, tomorrow if you want.
Tomorrow would be amazeballs.
I can do mine tomorrow if that's what you want, Ms. Demick.
Please,
No,
please.
And thank you for the nimbleness. I mean, we know that we're looking at things last week. We have thoughts, and obviously we have community members weighing in. And I think it was just it was a great revelation just to recognize. And people are I realize that people are tired of looking at things like.
Oh, we
let's
talked
move on.
about that the entire work group.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, these conversations that people have been having them since before I was born. Same. I know that because they told me, not because I was there. This is before I was. No, but seriously, the same issues, right?
But I did have a question around arts and culture for this next coming fiscal year. So they could still apply through this process. Okay.
They could just apply for anything less than $25,000, unless they were going to meet they were going to take some
education
action
or-
within those
Yep,
4 broad
yep.
categories, then they could apply for something
Okay.
more than $25,000.
And in the meantime, we're going to be over the next 12 months
we'll figure out how we want to, and part of that is to look and to see if the CACVB is an option for the way we manage arts and culture funding.
And if I may, as the council rep on the CACVB, as soon as we get that worked out, and there's been some proposal about what we're going to be carving out by way of an arts fund for the CACVB, I'm not even sure if that's the right way to phrase it. We are going to be getting an arts representative, but there is a strong intention on the part of the CACVB to be funding arts and culture programming. So this body's going to need to know what that body is planning to set aside so that we can make that kind of a decision.
And you all are in the, you all are almost ready to hire someone, is that?
We're in the process of still hiring an executive director, right? That's not been finalized yet.
But close.
We're close.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the work.
Are those tomato plants? Are those tomato plants? Or are they?
Khaki, take another one. Ryan will grab it for you. All right.
It's 5 to 10.
Where are we?
At the end. At the very end.
Repeal of the Charlottesville City Code Section 17-8, first of two readings.
Yes, and we have not been talking about this since before you were born, so this is helpful. This is one of the city codes that, under the interim city manager, we were tasked to look at those institutional ordinances or inequities that could occur. And Mr. Blair was going through the city ordinances and identified a city ordinance that was put into place in 1962, typically right during the civil rights era. And when you do the research on this code, throughout the nation, they had very similar codes that were going on. Interesting enough, and it's about your trick-or-treating and Halloween that occurs. The city currently has an ordinance in place that it enacted in 1962, particularly prohibiting trick-or-treating for anyone who was over the age of 12. Really, which as I start to pull up some of the things that occurred for the Halloween parade in 2018, which would have been in violation of our current code, if you look at some of the things that were occurring. When the city enacted the ordinance, they actually connected it with a curfew ordinance. Again, oftentimes they were targeted at those ordinances at Black and brown communities, so that communities are younger, African American, particularly males, would have to be off the city streets or not utilizing city properties in services after 10 o'clock. And each year we have legions, literally, of individuals who don costumes with parents, and they make their annual trek through the neighborhood around these. And we encourage this participation here in Charlottesville, and it's a very highly celebrated event with the Charlottesville Halloween parades. We have Halloween with the dog parades and costumes that go on, and there are events that are celebrated throughout. Interestingly enough, throughout the city, or different cities, these fines for trick-or-treating over the age of 12 are misdemeanor ones, which could carry with them $2,500 fines for trick-or-treating over the age of 13, and we here in Charlottesville currently have that ordinance. Each of these individual ones who were out with their families would have been fined for participating in that if it had been enforced. The city of Charlottesville, we were not able to find in the last 5 years, and presumably ever, when this ordinance has been enforced in the modern day times when we would have that. What is interesting is even when the town where our candy corn originated in Bellevue, Illinois, they ban anyone. So the makers of the original candy corn, you're not allowed to do that. Throughout Virginia, they have them in the Chesapeake Bay area, South Carolina, Mississippi, and a lot of other places. And unfortunately, our code would continue to criminalize some of our winners. If you look up there of the pictures that we took of the winners of the different categories around family, children's, and themes. And we would also go after Glinda the Good Witch and her little munchkin as well. And if anyone is a Kiss fan, that would be a problem as well. So what we're asking is that the reading is that we repeal section 17-8 of the Charlottesville City Code, as it does not align with the city's values or vision around Halloween. And again, just some additional winners and persons who could be penalized if their parents were taking them trick-or-treating as well. So this was actually one of the winners of the families. It was called the Happy Meal Halloween, and it was the entire family that showed up as part of the trick-or-treating. So that is why we are here before you, asking that we lift that and repeal that code as the first of 2 readings.
Okay.
Any questions?
Can it go to the consent agenda?
Yeah, thank you, that was,
Thank you for pictures, fun.
Thank you. I was a guest judge and happened to take a bunch of pictures that day. So, and thank you, Brian, for loading them up for me. But yes, if you moved it to the consent agenda, I would be happy with that as well. Thank you.
thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Illuminating.
So-
It's done and quick.
Any further discussion, comments? I have 10 questions. I'm joking. All right, consent agenda. It is.
Don't have no assaults in here because you're gonna make me.
So report, bike month. Is this just?
That's just a
okay.
read only.
All right.
Yeah, we don't, yeah.
Didn't see it. So any other business?
I just have it's maybe related to the earlier discussion about the pilot with the trolley. If we could get, as soon as you figure out how that's going to be structured, Dr. Richardson, could we get that presented to council, or at least just a brief presentation so that we can understand the notifications that are going to be happening, the kinds of items that are going to be researched and tracked, so that we do have an understanding what the pilot will be doing. And then we need to, that'll be a way to convey it to the public as well. Thank you.
That's a good idea. All right.
Any other? All right, matters by the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
I'm John Hall. I'd like to say that we
Ms.
should
Thomas.
pay gas line workers more money than what is paid weed whackers. Gas line work is very dangerous work. They're not allowed to have lighters or anything like that. And they've brought this concern to me, to my attention. And I just wanted to say that. Also, with regard to Bike Month and the Bike Ped plan and Streetscape, I've kind of calculated, and I have a line, a clothesline that I've kind of marked out. We need to try to have 32 feet dedicated throughout the city for streetscape. That would be 11 feet each way for cars, 5 feet for bikes, 5 feet for car parking. That's 32. Now, if we want to have a sidewalk on one side at least, that would be another 5 feet. So therefore, the magic number is 37. I think we should strive for that throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak? Yeah, no, I thought she was coming. All right, meeting adjourned. Oh,
You were coming.
Molly speaks.
Molly Conger, city resident. A speaker earlier tonight made the point that the magistrate's office is not really very accessible, and I think that's worth reiterating. It is difficult to get to. It's at the jail. The city website still listed at the Water Street address. It moved more than 15 years ago. That office moved when I was in middle school, and it's still listed incorrectly on the city website. But even if it were listed correctly, it's not easy to get to, which matters. I don't know if you've ever had to swear out a warrant, but a lot of times officers won't even take a complaint from you. They'll tell you you have to go do it yourself at the magistrate's office. And so in order to have access to the criminal justice system, if something happens to you, you have to get to this office that is hard to get to.
Okay.
So that's worth considering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we're trying to leave, but briefly, just a follow-up to that. The magistrate's office is one point, but I think the city's website is another. That's another point. Like, and I would love for us to maybe have a presentation or an agenda item for that, because it needs to be updated across the board.
It needs to be more than updated.
Oh well, what's more than updated is that
New website.
so an overhaul. So I would love for us to maybe look into that. In addition to, I don't know how, and I'm looking at Ms. Galvin because she's been here the longest, the most institutional knowledge in this regard. I don't know how the other commissions, like the Housing Authority or Planning Commission and whatnot, like I know they have their own pages on the website, but all of it needs to be revamped.
Yes,
So
it's
I don't-
going to be a standard, because some advisory groups have a website link and others don't.
Right.
And they're not consistent in terms of what they provide in terms of information. That's been something that has been a perennial problem.
Relative to boards and commissions, I've already been in contact with Ms. Thomas as well as Ms. Robinson around just now that we have her in place and that's going to be her main role, just really looking end to end at this whole process of boards and commissions. Even her going through the packet today for all of us, like it's just clear that there's just some communication opportunities we have, but also consistency in how we communicate with the public. Even yesterday when I was trying to figure out, is this person's terms up? Just the inconsistency of what's available on the websites. So it's something I think we just need to look at pretty broadly.
And that's a city council, city management joint function.
Yep.
Because we can outsource some of that work though.
I'm sure Mr. Wheeler has lots of thoughts too.
Okay.
Yes.
Well.
When I first brought that up about 3-4 years ago, there was some sort of a sunshine check, and I think we got like about a D.
Huh.
I mean, it was serious, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it needs to be revamped.
it's time to change, and I think we have Dr. Richardson here to help us.
So, that's covered. That's covered. Oh, okay. Okay.
We're a work in progress.
That was good.
And since, just a thought I just had in boards and commission, I know that Councilor Bellamy talked about the CRHA board and the importance of people applying, but we also had comments earlier about the parking commission. And so all of the boards are important to make sure that there's representation on and that you are able to, voice your opinions. Councilor Bellamy is interested in the towing commission. So, just we need to make sure that people are aware when there are vacancies so that they can apply.
You really want to be on that?
Thank you, meeting
Mr.
adjourned.
Blair, I said 10:06. I said 10:06 at 5 o'clock tonight.